Hello everyone. Today I saw a post on Facebook, well, a few days ago, but I have commenced an argument online, again, discussing a post that I saw on Facebook. This post involved erotic pictures of a celebrity, and it was a celebrity by the name of Martha Stewart. And this Martha Stewart was posing presumably naked in cooking apparel such as an apron. And the comment said something suggesting that she was an ageist slur beginning with G and ending with ILF, and saying that Snoop Dogg, who had previously made appearances with her, Snoop Dogg is an American rapper, by the way, and this gentleman had it said, he implied, and then they said something graphic that implied that they had sexual intercourse. And the person who posted this is a long-time fervent supporter of Stalinism or communism, and I am saying this video, I am completely fine with people who have whatever political persuasion. That is aside from the point. But the reason I am pointing this out is because they often make allusions to social justice or political correctness, such as not using slurs, not this and that, the other thing, and frequently they make posts about violently hurting people who they deem are bigoted towards other people, or who perpetuate rape culture. Well, in this picture, I pointed out that that word, the GILF word, is an ageist and sexist slur, firstly. Secondly, it is also, and it is ageist and it is sexist, it is also sexual harassment to post pictures of someone online or to redistribute pictures of people online and make comments about their age and their appearance and their body and their possible sexual behaviors. It is extremely bigoted, and it is sexual harassment. How is it not? Imagine if someone did that to your daughter, or to your son, or to your mother. It is sexual harassment. And then many of them argued with me that it was not sexual harassment. And this is the point. One of the points of this video is that how is this not sexual harassment? Just because someone wanted, people often make the claim that just because she is dressed in a way that is sexually provocative does not mean she wants to provoke you. That does not mean that she welcomes your attention, or your stares, or your comments on her body, or your sexual attention. She is dressing that way for whatever reason, and that is of no concern to you, and mind your own business. Otherwise, it is sexual harassment. And is this not the same thing? Is it not the same thing online? Just because someone makes a post online, or a post for some kind of article or magazine, or even participates in pornography, does that give you the right to sexualize them, to make sexual comments without their consent, to accost them, to speak of them in such a way? How is it any different from doing it in person? The argument is, oh, well, by making that picture, they had some intent, they had some commercial consumer intent, intended deliberately to sexualize the viewer, to influence the viewer. It was deliberate. Well, probably. If I'm being fair with you, if I'm being honest, probably. I mean, it was probably a deliberate marketing stunt that she was explicitly paid for, and there was probably a marketing team that did that, right? Probably. But you could also say probably about people dressing provocatively, that they probably want to be seen as provocative. You could probably make a lot of these probably statements. But if we are to build a society built upon consent, my friends, Those probablys need to go away. You know, you can make your own assumptions. You can think about your personal opinions and create your own ideas. Sure, there's a lot of probablys. There's a lot of things one can extrapolate from these scenarios. But what about you? What about your actions? I think that's far more important. You should. It's completely okay to make all kinds of wild assumptions and allegations in your mind, but when you start making comments like that publicly, it is bigotry, it is sexual harassment, and it inevitably will make people uncomfortable. Certainly in this case, it probably contributes to the benefit of Martha Stewart and her associates, because that may have been part of the marketing directive. But at the same time, it normalizes making physical comments on people's appearance. And in previous videos, this is what I discussed about how people have a difficult time, a very difficult time, a much more difficult time than they imagine, separating fiction from reality, separating online fictional celebrity cartoon actions from real life. It seems like the human mind, while it may be able to make a distinction once in a while, I feel that the human mind has a very difficult time doing it consistently, over and over again, without warping itself in its perceptions, such as is the case here, such as is the case. There is no actual difference between making a comment on Martha Stewart's body and on a magazine publicly versus making a comment on someone on the street. There is morally very little difference between the two. Yes, you could argue that there is a level of intent that the magazine had, but see, that's just your argument. That's just your allegation. That is just your opinion, and your actions are separate from that. You maybe your intent is otherwise, but that changes not the nature of whether it is sexual harassment or not. You know, if I have a coworker who makes a move on me, that possibly is a form of sexual harassment. And if I make a move on her, that is also sexual harassment. My employer will likely see that the same way. The fact that she made a move on me first, it doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like who did it first, my friends. It doesn't. Oh. So, and this gets to our next point. I commented that if this arrangement occurred, then it is likely a form of rape. And that got me quite a lot of kickback, because as I mentioned in a video before, 99% of sex is rape. And if you disagree, please do watch that video and comment and let me know what your disagreements in the comments, please. I welcome your disagreements. Oh, believe me, that is why I'm here. Now, people said that this was not rape. And I asked, why is it not rape? And they said, well, just because they are co-workers does not mean that any action between the two is rape. And I said, well, then we must define what the definition of rape is. And people say, well, it's rape. They said, well, it's not like he was her boss or something. And then they accused me of being racist because they believe that I was biased because it was Snoop Dogg and he is of African descent, and that is why they allege that I saw this as rape as opposed to other things. I've made videos about this before. I'm sure I have my innate biases that I'm not aware of. I'm sure that I am privileged and don't see my own biases, but I've made many such comments before. Well, if it is racist of me to make this assumption, then it is also racist to assume that I am making a racist assumption based upon race. It is also racist to assume that he committed rape against her, because just because he is a man doesn't mean he raped her. Maybe she raped him. You can go down a rabbit hole that way. Absolutely, in any direction, my friends. But I'd like to get back to the point of whether or not it is rape. There are invariably two ways in which people define rape. And I personally believe there can be no middle ground. Rape is a subjective, ambiguous term that exists only or largely within the concept of a punitive justice model. The two definitions are as such. Firstly, is an act of extreme violence, coercing someone to have sex with them under the explicit and overt threat of violence, often using a weapon. In this definition of consent, we will call this the violent rape. We will realize that this rape is not dependent upon the violation of consent per se. The harm caused is believed to be from the act of violence caused inherently in of it. That is where the trauma of it comes from, right? The second definition, at least supposedly, I am making no claims here. This is just the perspectives people often have in the way that they discuss consent culture. The second definition of rape is that of lack of consent. Anything that is a lack of consent is a violation of consent. And see, people at my college university all say this. They all say, no means no, no means no, yes means yes. Anything that is less than fully 100% consensual is some kind of reiteration of rape. And so then you either have these, you can only pick one of these. You can only pick one of these before it starts becoming a slippery slope to the other. Like, for example, most people start, they're straight shooters. They don't play games. They don't mince words. They only go by the strict definition of rape. If it's not that, it's nothing else. And anything else that is not violent rape is some kind of bastardization of the term and lessens the plight and it lessens the validations people have about their plight and their suffering. It makes light of their suffering, is what people would say. Well, then that means pedophilia is acceptable as not rape. That means that pedophilia is not rape. That means that necrophilia is not rape. That means that incest, bestiality, all of these things are not inherently rape. That means drugging someone is not rape. And we can all agree that these are in some way could be considered some kind of violation of consent, right? So that strict definition does little to serve us, right? You're going back towards the other way, right? You're going towards, well, it's still rape because she couldn't fight back. Oh, so now fighting back, now not being able to fight back is the same thing as actually fighting back, right? As saying no, as okay, well, she didn't say no. Where no matter what, unless you accept that strict definition and you stick to it completely, and then you're going to slide the other way. And so I feel that the only definition of rape that is actually applicable is lack of consent. And people disagree with me. People disagree with me on that subject a lot, and I welcome those disagreements. If you disagree with me, I'd like to see consistency in your logic. Your disagreements are valid, but they should be consistent because they will lead you to the truth. But why do I say it is rape for an employee to have sex with another employee? Well, this person appealed to the strict definition of rape and accused me of making light of the suffering of real rape victims. Well, saying that there are real rape victims and rape victims who aren't really rape victims also makes light of people's suffering. Absolutely. Secondly, this gentleman then went on to say, it's not like he was her boss or anything. So it's not like he was her boss or anything and forced her to have sex with him in order to keep her job. Well, first of all, there's two elements right there that are not according to your strict definition of rape, the strict violence of rape, the strict violent definition of rape. You are already bringing into it the idea of a power imbalance being tantamount to rape. So that you are also admitting that violence need not be necessary, that coercion simply is. For example, it would not be seen as an act of rape to require someone to shave their legs to wear a short skirt to work. I'm not saying I disagree with that perspective, but it would not be considered such by society. So why should it matter if they are coercing someone to have sex with them in order to keep their job? If it's not violent rape, then it's not rape, right? Sarcastically speaking. I was being sarcastic there. So, see, we start off with the simple, straight shooting, tell it like it is definition of rape, and then it kind of backslides, and you start making acknowledgments and concessions, such as, oh, well, if there's a power imbalance and it's her boss, it's the CEO, and she's the secretary or something, then that is rape because it's coercive. Okay, well, yeah, sure. I have no qualms with that, but you're already sliding into the consent argument. And another thing I'd like to point out is, when people talk about duress as a result of positions of power and dating, oftentimes they talk about the CEO and the secretary. But I'd like to remind you that first of all, not everyone works in corporations large enough to have tremendous power discrepancies like that. Secondly, even in large corporations, is the head of custodial is the custodial manager of a higher or lower position than the lawyer in the company? Well, of course the CEO is in a higher position than the secretary, but surely the CEO's secretary is in a higher position than both a lawyer and the custodial manager, right? Yes, the lawyer is well educated, but you can replace that lawyer with any graduate from high school. You can replace him easily. Whereas the custodial manager, even though he may be making less money, he probably also knows things about how to maintain the apartment from his experience, and therefore is not as easy to replace. So even though he makes less and therefore is less financially powerful, he has greater tenure than the lawyer does. And likewise, even though the secretary may make less money than both the lawyer and the custodial manager, the secretary probably knows what kind of cream the CEO likes on his coffee. He probably knows how he prefers to schedule things. She probably is in tune with his schedule, with his communicative preferences, and so forth and so forth. So, in many ways, she is superior. So, in large corporations, you start seeing there is a hierarchy, definitely, but it becomes increasingly difficult to tell who is higher than who, and it creates difficulty in assessing whether there is duress or not. So that I feel the example of CEO and secretary is often practically irrelevant to the. I mean, of course, most of the time the CEO is not going to date the secretary. It probably happened before, but most of the time that doesn't happen. Most of the time it doesn't happen because, one, there's no reason for it. It's not like people inherently feel the need to exploit power gaps and power differentials. Yes, that's enough of that. The second issue is, the power differential is actually kind of like a pretty weak argument in terms of employment, because it's rare. It's rare that the CEO will date an intern. It's rare. It's rare, right? We can agree that that's probably not the most common example. The more common examples of workplace relationships causing problems in the workplace are employees dating other employees, or dating customers. I've worked in a lot of different companies, and I can tell you every single one of them in the rule book, in the policies, it talked about how dating between employees is strictly prohibited, and I've gotten in trouble for sexual harassment a lot because I go when I see a woman I like, I approach her and I introduce myself to her and I let her know that I would like to know if she welcomes my courtship. And you can definitely argue about whether that is respectful of consent or not. I make no claims. But I can tell you 100% in the corporate world, dating people within a job is absolutely rife for conflict, and it is often always classified as sexual harassment under various policies. Every single business will have some kind of policy prohibiting dating in the office, dating with other employees, and if they have customers, expressly forbidding dating or romantic advances towards customers, because it represents a conflict of interest, firstly. Secondly, because it creates a hostile work environment. Do you know what it's like? Do you know what it's like when people argue during a relationship? Imagine that at work. The employer does not want that. The employer does not want that. The other employees do not want that occurring in the workplace, right? So it is classified as sexual harassment. And because the people there are operating in an environment in which they depend upon that place, upon that geographic location and place for their livelihood, anything that occurs there is going to affect their family, themselves, their children, their loved ones, anything. They can't consent. Your co-workers cannot consent to sexual relations with anyone else working at the company. It is not fully consensual, simply because of the fact that there are pressures for performance, for social function that are there, that do not allow a person to fully make informed decisions. There will be bias, there will be conflict of interest, and it's probably not the best place for consent. And remember what we talked about, that if it doesn't have 100% full consent, that it is rape. That consent is not the state of nature. The state of nature is the absence of consent. Consent must be attained. So if it has not been attained, or if it is difficult to attain or not able to be attained, that action is some kind of reiteration of rape. And so this is why I maintain that it was rape, and I'd like you all to remember that all in our current model, all of the sex that occurs in our society is most likely some kind of reiteration of rape, that consent in of itself is absent from the natural world and must be implemented. It must be sought. It must be garnered. If it is absent, it is rape. Well, I'd like to know what you think. Why, especially if you disagree with me, I'd really like to know why you still maintain that having sex with a fellow employee is not some kind of rape. Please let me know your thoughts. Please have a nice day, everyone. Goodbye. God bless you.